I, vain Nightgate, reject you as my fated mate. The words sliced through the Luna ceremony hall like a blade through silk. Ancient stone walls absorbed the echo, and for a moment, the hundreds of wolves gathered in a circle around the claiming runes stood frozen in collective shock. I should have known. Girls like me don't get happy endings. We get lessons. My name is Marin Hallowheart, and this is the story of how I died and was reborn in the same night. How I went from being the pack's invisible servant to its most powerful Luna Queen. How I discovered that sometimes the cruelest rejection is actually the greatest mercy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The borrowed gown hung loose on my frame, pale blue silk that had been altered 3 times and still didn't quite fit. Silver moonlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating tapestries that depicted legendary matings. Wolves finding their fated mates. Bonds sealed before the moon goddess herself. The scent of night-blooming jasmine was so heavy I could taste it, sweet and cloying, making my stomach turn. Or maybe that was just fear. Vane stood in the center of the claiming circle, and something was wrong. His expression wasn't joy or love or even nervous anticipation. It was apology. Pity. The kind of look you give someone before you break their heart. Behind him, Zora Ironpaw stood in crimson silk that fit her perfectly, her amber eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Her dark hair cascaded over bare shoulders, and she wore power like other women wore jewelry. Effortlessly, naturally, as if she'd been born to it. Maybe she had been. The pack needs a strong Luna, Vane continued, and his voice carried to every corner of the hall. Zora's bloodline, her power, it's what our people deserve. You understand, don't you, Marin? You've always been practical. Practical. The word tasted like ashes. My legs threatened to give out. My chest constricted, each breath a struggle. Inside my mind, my wolf ember howled in pain. A sound so raw and broken that tears burned behind my eyes. But I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Around me, the pack watched with varying degrees of discomfort and agreement. Some nobles nodded, their expressions saying what their voices wouldn't. Of course he chose her. Did you really think otherwise? Elder Torrin Stonelidge stepped forward, his ancient face impassive. He began the formal nullification rites. Words in the old tongue that would erase our bond before the moon goddess herself. Poor dear. Zora's voice cut through the ritual, all false sympathy and barely concealed triumph. She stepped into the claiming circle, her movements graceful and predatory. Did you really think someone like Vane would choose you? The mate bond doesn't mean destiny, it means choice. And he chose better. Laughter rippled through the hall. Not everyone. Some wolves looked uncomfortable, even ashamed, but enough. Enough that the sound wrapped around me like chains, pulling me down, drowning me. Broken bloodline, someone whispered. Weak wolf, another added. Lucky she even has a wolf at all. The comments came from all sides, each one a blade finding its mark. My low birth, my weak wolf, my presumption in thinking I could stand beside a prince. I turned to flee. Vision blurring, legs finally moving, desperate to escape before I shattered completely. Stop. One word. Absolute authority. The hall fell silent as if the moon herself had commanded it. Every head turned toward the elevated dais, toward the ancient stone throne where Alpha King Wilder Blackwood sat. The Silent King. That's what they called him. 7 years ago, he'd taken the throne at 23 when his father fell in battle. Since then, he'd ruled with absolute authority, never showing weakness, never taking a mate. He was darkness personified, black hair, storm gray eyes, a presence so commanding that even the most powerful alphas bowed instinctively. I'd always felt his gaze on me at pack gatherings, though I could never understand why a king would notice someone like me. Now he rose, and the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. He descended the dais steps slowly, deliberately. Each footfall echoed through the chamber. The crowd parted like water before him, wolves bowing as he passed, their eyes lowered in instinctive submission. He entered the claiming circle, unprecedented, shocking, and stood beside me. I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, and for one moment, his expression softened. Something like pain flickered across his features before the mask of authority returned. "The nullification is granted," he said, his voice carrying absolute finality. "Vayne Nightgate is free of his mate bond." The pause stretched into eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs. But Maren Hallowheart is not free, because I claim her. As of this moment, before the moon goddess and this pack, she is mine. The hall exploded. Gasps, shouts, frantic whispers cascading over each other in a wave of shock. "Your Majesty, this is irregular," Elder Torin protested, his ancient voice sharp. "She's an Omega, and you are the Alpha King. The bloodline concerns." "I am the bloodline." Wilder's response was ice. "I am the law. She is my choice, and my choice is final." He extended his hand to me, palm up. Waiting. Not commanding. Offering. I could refuse. Aluna had that right, even before a king. I could flee this nightmare and never look back. But I looked into his eyes and saw something that stopped my breath. Not pity, not duty, recognition. Like he was truly seeing me, all of me, in a way no one ever had. I took his hand. The claiming mark appeared on both our wrists simultaneously. Intertwined wolves beneath a crescent moon, silver lines burning into our skin. The bond snapped into place with such force that I gasped, my knees buckling. It didn't feel like the bond with Vayne. That had been a thin thread, easily dismissed, easily forgotten. This felt like roots growing deep into earth, like finding the missing half of my soul, like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. For a moment, I could feel everything. His fierce protectiveness, his rage at my humiliation, and underneath it all, something tender and ancient that I couldn't name. Wilder led me from the hall, his hand firm on mine. Behind us, chaos erupted. Arguments, shock, confusion. Before us lay an unknown future. My last glimpse was of Vayne's stricken face, Zora's fury, and the pack's collective disbelief. Then the doors closed, and I was alone with the Alpha King. 3 months earlier. The sound of breaking dishes echoed through the servant quarters before the sun had touched the pack house windows. I twisted my body, catching the tray that slipped from the new girl's trembling hands, steadying it with a precision that drew a surprised gasp from the head housekeeper. The older woman stepped back, adjusting her apron, her eyes narrowing with something between reluctant acknowledgement and irritation. "You move like you're trying to be invisible," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. I didn't answer. I simply continued working. The porcelain clinked as I arranged breakfast settings for the pack nobility, and I used the familiar rhythm to quiet the whisper in my mind. My wolf, Ember, who felt smaller and weaker with each passing day. The head housekeeper shook her head and returned to supervising the others, leaving me to my task. I always tried to be invisible. Invisibility was survival in the Shadow Pine Pack. When you were an Omega from the servant quarters, when your wolf was weak and your bloodline questioned, you learned to move through spaces without disturbing the air. You learned to anticipate needs before they were spoken. You learned that drawing attention meant inviting mockery. My mother had taught me that, in the years before she died. "Keep your head down, Marin," she'd whispered during those late nights when I was small, curled against her side in our tiny room. "We survive by being useful, by being needed but not noticed. The moment they truly see you is the moment you become a target." She'd been right. 3 years ago, when illness took her while she was serving at a noble's dinner, they'd given her a pauper's burial and moved me into an even smaller room. No one mourned. No one noticed. She'd been invisible in life and invisible in death. I was determined not to follow her example in that final aspect. The pack house stirred to life around me as dawn broke. Wolves emerged from their chambers. Nobility first, then the warriors, then everyone else in the careful hierarchy that governed our existence. I moved between them like a ghost, refilling cups, clearing plates, attending to needs before they were voiced. "Marin, the training grounds need water," one of the warriors called. I nodded, already moving toward the well. "Marin, Elder Torin wants his chambers cleaned before noon." I adjusted my mental schedule, calculating how to fit everything in. "Marin, watch where you're going." I'd nearly collided with Zora Ironpaw, who stood with her circle of elite she-wolves near the main staircase. They blocked the path deliberately, forcing me to stop, to wait, to acknowledge my lower status. "Sorry," I murmured, eyes down. "You should be." Zora examined her nails, each one painted blood red. "Although I suppose we should be grateful you're useful for something, even if it's just carrying water and scrubbing floors." Her friends laughed, the cruel, casual laughter of wolves who'd never known hardship, never questioned their place in the world. I waited for them to move. They didn't. "I heard your wolf still hasn't won a single challenge," one of them said, a blonde named Kara. "How embarrassing." "Maybe she doesn't actually have a wolf," another suggested. "Maybe it's all pretend." Embers stirred in my mind, hurt and angry, but I pushed her down gently. "Not here. Not now. They're not worth it." Finally, Zora stepped aside with an exaggerated sigh. "Run along, servant. Some of us have important things to do today." I hurried past, my face burning, their laughter following me down the corridor. This was my life. This was normal. The Shadowpine Pack operated on a strict hierarchy. At the top sat Alpha King Wilder Blackwood and his brother, Prince Vane. Below them, the nobility, wolves from ancient bloodlines with power and wealth. Then the warriors, the craftsmen, the common wolves. And at the bottom, servants like me. Omegas with weak wolves and no social standing. I'd never questioned it. This was simply how things were. The day passed in its usual rhythm. I hauled water to the training grounds, where young wolves practiced combat under the watchful eyes of their instructors. I cleaned Elder Torin's chambers, careful not to disturb his countless scrolls and artifacts. I helped prepare the evening meal, working alongside other servants in the massive kitchen. By sunset, my back ached, and my hands were raw. But the work was done. "Marin, a moment." I turned to find Beta Kellen Winterborn in the doorway. He was one of the king's most trusted advisors, a massive wolf with kind eyes that softened his intimidating presence. "Yes, Beta?" "The Harvest Moon Gathering is tonight in the forest clearing. All pack members are required to attend." He paused. "That includes you." My stomach dropped. Pack gatherings were mandatory, but I usually managed to work through them, serving food and drinks while others celebrated. Actually participating, actually being present among the nobility and warriors, was a different matter entirely. I can serve," I offered. "I'm good at—" "No." His voice was gentle but firm. The Alpha King's orders. Everyone celebrates tonight. No exceptions. He left before I could protest further. 3 hours later, I stood at the edge of the forest clearing, wearing my only decent dress, a simple gray thing that had belonged to my mother. Around me, the pack celebrated under the massive harvest moon that hung low and golden in the sky. Bonfires burned bright, casting dancing shadows. Music played, drums and flutes and voices raised in traditional songs. Wolves laughed and danced and celebrated the season's bounty. Some had already shifted, running through the trees in their wolf forms, howling their joy to the moon. I stayed at the edges, as always. Invisible. Until I wasn't. It happened without warning. One moment I was pouring drinks for a group of warriors. The next, a sensation like lightning struck through my chest. A pull so strong it nearly dropped me to my knees. The bond. The mate bond. Somewhere in this clearing was my fated mate. Embers surged to life in my mind, no longer weak or quiet. Find him. We need to find him. I followed the pull through the crowd, my heart hammering. This wasn't supposed to happen to wolves like me. Fated mates were rare, precious, a gift from the moon goddess herself. And they certainly weren't supposed to happen to servant girls with weak wolves and no prospects. But the pull didn't lie. I pushed through dancing wolves, past fires and celebration, following the invisible thread that wound tighter with each step. The bond pulled me toward the center of the clearing, where the pack's elite gathered around the largest bonfire. And there he was. Prince Vane Nightgate stood with his friends, a cup in his hand, laughing at something someone had said. He was beautiful in the firelight, golden hair, warm eyes, the kind of smile that made hearts flutter. Everyone loved Vane. He was charm personified, the golden prince who would one day help his brother rule. He turned, and his eyes met mine across the distance. The bond snapped fully into place. His expression shifted from casual enjoyment to shock to something that looked almost like wonder. He set down his cup and moved toward me, the crowd parting naturally before him. "You," he said softly when he reached me. "You're my mate." I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He took my hand, his touch sending electricity through my entire body. "Finally found you." Those 3 words. 3 simple words that changed everything. Over the following weeks, Vane visited me in secret. He'd find me in the gardens or the library or the quiet corners of the pack house where servants weren't supposed to linger. "I can't believe it's you," he'd say, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "All this time, and you were right here." We'd talk for hours. He told me about the pressure of being a prince, the expectations and responsibilities he carried. I told him about my mother, about growing up invisible, about dreams I'd never dared voice aloud. "When I claim you at the Luna ceremony," he promised one night. His forehead pressed against mine. "Everything changes. You'll be my Luna, Marin. No one will ever look down on you again. You'll stand beside me and they'll see what I see. Someone extraordinary." I believed him. Moon above, I believed him. Even as Zora's mockery intensified, and it did, growing sharper and more public, I held on to his promise. Even as doubt whispered in the dark hours before dawn, I pushed it away. Vane loved me. He'd chosen me. Soon, everyone would know. The morning of the Luna ceremony arrived gray and cold. I woke before dawn in my small room, staring at the borrowed dress laid out on my narrow bed. Other servants had helped me prepare it, some kind, others barely concealing their skepticism. "Do you really think he'll go through with it?" one asked while hemming the skirt. "Of course he will," another defended, though her voice lacked conviction. "They're fated mates. Fated mates reject bonds all the time," the first countered. especially when one of them is a prince and the other is... She didn't finish. She didn't need to. I pushed Ember's unease away, refusing to acknowledge the growing dread. This was my day, my transformation, my chance at everything I'd never dared hope for. By evening, I stood outside the ceremony hall, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The borrowed dress fit better after all the alterations, but it still felt foreign. I'd never worn anything so fine before. "Ready?" Beta Kellen asked, appearing beside me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He pushed open the massive doors. The hall was magnificent. Ancient stone walls adorned with tapestries showing legendary matings. Silver moonlight streaming through tall windows. The scent of night-blooming jasmine heavy and sweet. Hundreds of pack members forming a circle around the claiming runes carved into the marble floor. And on the elevated dais, seated on the ancient stone throne, Alpha King Wilder Blackwood watched with those unreadable storm-gray eyes. I'd seen him before, of course. Everyone had. But I'd never been the focus of his attention, never felt the full weight of his gaze. It was like standing before an approaching storm, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. He was nothing like his brother. Where Vane was golden warmth and easy charm, Wilder was darkness and danger and barely restrained power. He'd ruled for 7 years with absolute authority, never showing weakness, never taking a mate despite the council's constant pressure. The Silent King, they called him, and he terrified everyone. I forced my eyes away, searching for Vane in the crowd. I found him standing in the claiming circle, and my heart soared. Then plummeted. His expression wasn't love or joy. It was apology and pity. And behind him, Zora Ironpaw stood in crimson silk, satisfaction gleaming in her amber eyes. No. Please, no. Vane opened his mouth, and the world shattered. I, Vane Nightgate, reject you as my fated mate. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For a moment, I couldn't process them. Couldn't understand how my name, Marin Hallowheart, could be connected to those words. Rejection. Fated mate. Reject. Then understanding crashed over me like a wave, and I couldn't breathe. Vane continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. The pack needs a strong Luna. Zora's bloodline, her power. It's what our people deserve. You understand, don't you, Marin? You've always been practical. Practical. The word echoed in my skull. Practical. As if my dreams and hopes and the bond that the moon goddess herself had forged were simply impractical notions to be set aside. My legs threatened to collapse. My chest felt crushed, ribs constricting around lungs that couldn't draw air. Inside my mind, Ember howled, a sound so raw, so broken, that tears burned behind my eyes. But I wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of them. Around me, the pack's reaction varied. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably, looking away as if embarrassed by the spectacle. Others nodded in agreement, their expressions saying what Vane had just voiced aloud. Of course this is right. Of course she was never suitable. Elder Torrin Stoneledge stepped forward, his ancient face carved from stone. He raised his hands and began the formal nullification rites, speaking words in the old tongue that would sever our bond before the moon goddess herself. The ritual should have been sacred, solemn. Instead, it felt like an execution. Poor dear, Zora's voice sliced through the ceremony. She stepped into the claiming circle with the grace of a predator approaching wounded prey, her crimson dress catching the moonlight. Did you really think someone like Vane would choose you? Her voice dripped false sympathy. The mate bond doesn't mean destiny. It means choice. And he chose better. Laughter rippled through the hall. Not everyone. Some wolves looked genuinely uncomfortable. but enough. More than enough. Look at her, someone stage whispered. Standing there like she actually belonged. Broken bloodline, another added. Weak wolf. My grandmother's poodle has more presence than her ember. Did you see that dress? Borrowed, obviously. Probably older than she is. Each comment found its mark. Each laugh was another blade. I stood frozen in the center of the claiming circle, surrounded by hundreds of wolves, and never in my life had I felt more alone. Zora circled me slowly, examining me like I was a curiosity. You must have known this would happen. Deep down, surely you realize that princes don't mate with servants, not when there are better options available. She gestured to herself. Powerful bloodline, warrior training, connections to every major pack in the territory. Everything I wasn't. But don't feel too badly, she continued, her voice loud enough for the entire hall to hear. You'll always have a place here. Someone needs to scrub the floors and carry water. That's what you were meant for. The laughter grew louder. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and cease existing, to wake up and discover this was all a terrible nightmare. Instead, I stood there visible in a way I'd never been before, and wished desperately for my old invisibility. Elder Torin completed the nullification rites. The bond is severed. Vayne Nightgate and Marin Hallowheart are no longer connected in the eyes of the moon goddess. Something inside me broke with those words. The thin thread I'd felt connecting me to Vayne, already weak, already barely there, snapped completely. But instead of relief, I felt only emptiness. Hollow. Vayne looked at me, and there might have been regret in his eyes. But he didn't speak, didn't defend me, didn't even try. Zora took his hand and he let her. She pressed against his side, claiming him publicly, and he accepted her claim. The hall erupted in cautious applause. This was what they'd wanted all along. Power matched with power, bloodline with bloodline. The natural order restored. I turned to flee. Vision blurring, legs finally moving, desperate to escape before I completely shattered. Stop! The single word cut through the noise like a blade through flesh. Absolute authority. Undeniable command. Every voice fell silent. Every body stilled. Even the flames in the torches seemed to freeze. Alpha King Wilder Blackwood rose from his throne. I'd forgotten he was there. In the horror of the rejection, I'd forgotten everything except my own humiliation. But now every eye turned toward the dais, toward the king who ruled us all. He descended the steps with deliberate slowness. Each footfall echoed through the chamber. The crowd parted before him, wolves bowing instinctively, their eyes lowered in submission. I should have looked away too, should have lowered my eyes like everyone else. But I was frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe, as he approached. Beta Kellen Winterborn stood beside the throne, his expression a mixture of concern and something that looked almost like satisfaction. As if this was expected. Planned. Wilder entered the claiming circle, something unprecedented, something that made the assembled wolves gasp in collective shock. An Alpha King didn't enter the claiming circle, not for anyone. He stood beside me, and I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. He was taller than Vayne, broader, radiating power that made my wolf instinctively want to submit. But there was something else there too, something I couldn't identify. For one moment, his expression softened. Pain flickered across his features, there and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Then the mask of authority returned, cold and absolute. The nullification is granted, he said, and his voice carried to every corner of the vast hall. Vayne Nightgate is free of his mate bond. Vayne's face showed confusion. Zora's showed growing alarm. The pause stretched. Wilder's storm-gray eyes held mine, and I felt like he was asking a question I didn't understand. But Marin Hallowheart is not free. His voice dropped lower, somehow more powerful for its quietness. Because I claim her, as of this moment, before the moon goddess and this pack, she is mine. The hall exploded. Gasps and shouts erupted from every direction. Wolves pushed forward, straining to see, to understand what had just happened. The noise was deafening. "Your Majesty!" Elder Torrin's voice rose above the chaos. "This is highly irregular. She's an Omega, and you are the Alpha King. The bloodline concerns the... I am the bloodline." Each word was ice. I am the law. She is my choice, and my choice is final. Wilder extended his hand to me, palm up, waiting, not commanding, not forcing, offering. I could refuse. Even before an Alpha King, a Luna had that right. I could reject this claim, flee this nightmare, never return to this hall of humiliation. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, not with pity or duty, but with something that looked almost like recognition. Maybe it was Ember, suddenly alert and watchful in my mind. Maybe it was simply that I had nowhere else to go. I looked into his eyes and saw layers I couldn't understand. Saw depths that spoke of years of watching, of waiting, of something I couldn't name. I took his hand. The claiming mark appeared instantly, silver lines burning into the skin of both our wrists. Intertwined wolves beneath a crescent moon. The pack's ancient claiming symbol, but somehow different. More intricate. More powerful. The bond snapped into place with such force that my knees buckled. Wilder's arm moved instantly to steady me, holding me upright as the world tilted. This was nothing like the bond with Vane. That had been a thin thread, easily ignored, barely present even when we were together. This was roots growing deep into earth. This was finding the other half of a soul you didn't know was incomplete. This was coming home after a lifetime of wandering lost. For one overwhelming moment, I felt everything. His fierce protectiveness, like a shield around me. His rage at my humiliation, barely controlled, threatening to explode. And underneath it all, something tender and ancient that I couldn't begin to name. Then the moment passed, and the bond settled into a steady presence. Strong, unbreakable, undeniable. "No!" Zora's voice cracked like a whip. "You can't do this! She's nothing! She is my Luna Queen." Wilder didn't even look at her. "And you will address her as such, or you will be removed from this pack." The threat was casual, almost careless, but everyone heard the steel beneath it. Vane stepped forward, his face pale. "Brother, I don't understand. Why would you—" "Understanding is not required." Wilder's tone was colder than I'd ever heard it. "Acceptance is." He turned to me, his voice dropping so only I could hear. "Can you walk?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. His hand remained firm on mine as he led me from the claiming circle, from the hall, from the staring eyes and shocked whispers. The crowd parted before us, wolves bowing as we passed. I caught glimpses of faces as we moved. Vane's shock and something that might have been jealousy. Zora's fury, barely contained. Elder Torrin's calculation, already planning something. Beta Kellen's slight smile, as if pleased by this turn of events. And countless others, confusion, disbelief, some anger, some curious interest. Then we were through the doors, and they closed behind us with a sound of finality. The corridor stretched ahead, silent except for our footsteps. Wilder didn't speak, just led me through passages I'd cleaned 1,000 times but never truly noticed. Upstairs, I'd scrubbed on my hands and knees, past rooms where I'd delivered meals and collected laundry. Finally, we stopped before a set of ornate double doors. He pushed them open, revealing chambers I'd only ever seen while cleaning them. The Luna Queen's chambers. Silk sheets on a massive bed. Carved furniture that had belonged to queens for generations. Windows overlooking the entire territory. Everything rich and beautiful and utterly foreign. I stood in the center of the vast space, lost, still wearing my borrowed dress that suddenly felt even more inadequate. Wilder watched me from the doorway, his expression unreadable. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with questions neither of us knew how to ask. Finally, he said quietly, "I'll give you time to process what happened tonight. These are your chambers now. Mine are connected through that door, but I won't enter unless you invite me." He turned to leave. Why? The word escaped before I could stop it. He paused, his hand on the doorframe. Why what? Why did you do that? Claim me? You're the Alpha King. You could have anyone. Why someone like me? He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he looked back over his shoulder, and his expression was complex. Layers of emotion I couldn't begin to understand. Because I couldn't watch them destroy you. You don't know me, don't I? The door closed behind him, leaving me alone in chambers meant for a queen. With more questions than answers and a claiming mark burning on my wrist. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I stood at the window of the Luna Queen's chambers. My chambers now, though the thought felt absurd, and watched the moon complete its arc across the sky. The claiming mark on my wrist pulsed with warmth, a constant reminder that everything had changed in the space of a single evening. Somewhere beyond these walls, the pack was still reeling. Somewhere, Vane was explaining his actions to his friends. Somewhere, Zora was planning her next move. Somewhere, Elder Torin was calculating political angles. And I was here, in rooms I'd once cleaned, wearing a dress that didn't fit, trying to understand how my life had become unrecognizable. Ember stirred in my mind, no longer whimpering in pain. She felt different, stronger, somehow more alert. What just happened to us? I asked her silently. I don't know, she responded, her voice clearer than it had been in years. But did you feel him? Did you feel his wolf? I had. In that moment when the bond snapped into place, I'd felt more than Wilder's emotions. I'd felt his wolf, massive, powerful, ancient, a black wolf that radiated authority and barely restrained strength. Nothing like what I'd felt with Vane. Dawn came eventually, pale light turning the sky from black to gray to pink. I watched it all, my mind spinning through the events of the previous night over and over, trying to find a pattern, trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. A knock on the door made me jump. Luna Queen? A woman's voice, hesitant. May I enter? I almost laughed. Luna Queen. As if I had any idea how to be a queen. Come in. The door opened to reveal an older woman I recognized as one of the head servants. She carried a tray laden with breakfast and wore an expression of cautious respect that I'd never seen directed at me before. Good morning, Luna Queen. I'm Nola. I'll be attending to your personal needs. She set the tray on a small table near the window. The Alpha King requests your presence in his private study when you're ready. My stomach clenched. When should I? Whenever you feel prepared. He said there's no rush. She hesitated, then added more gently. He also said to tell you that you didn't have to come at all, if you preferred solitude today, but that he hoped you would. After Nola left, I forced myself to eat, though the food tasted like ash. Then I bathed in the massive tub, a luxury I'd never experienced, and tried to calm my racing heart. I had to face him eventually. Had to understand why he'd done what he'd done. An hour later, I stood outside his private study, my hand raised to knock, trying to gather courage. The door opened before I could touch it. Wilder stood there, and in the morning light, he looked different than he had the previous night. Less like a king on a throne, more like a man. He'd changed from formal ceremonial robes into simple dark clothes, and his black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Come in," he said quietly. The study was smaller than I'd expected, lined with books and maps, with a large desk covered in papers. It felt personal in a way the throne room never could. Lived in. Real. "You didn't have to do that," I said once the door closed behind us. The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "I know. Then why did you?" He moved to the window, his back to me. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was quiet. "I couldn't watch them destroy you." "You said that last night, but you don't know me." He turned, and his storm-gray eyes held mine. "Don't I?" "How could you? I'm a servant. You're the Alpha King. We exist in completely different worlds." "Do we?" He crossed the room slowly, stopping a few feet away. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, but not so close as to be threatening. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." My heart hammered. "Okay. I've been aware of you for years, Marin." The words hung between us. I opened my mouth, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. Please." He took a breath. 5 years ago, there was a rogue attack near our borders. A young wolf cub got separated from his mother. You found him. Memory crashed over me. I'd been 16, working in the garden, when I'd heard crying. A pup, barely old enough to shift, terrified and alone. And then the rogue had appeared, massive, scarred, clearly diseased and beyond reason. "I had nothing but a gardening blade," I whispered. "Rusty and barely sharp enough to cut weeds." "But you didn't run." Wilder's voice was intense now, focused. "The pup was behind you, and you stood between him and a rogue twice your size. You were terrified. I could smell your fear from 100 yards away, but you didn't run." "You were there?" "I was leading a patrol. We heard the commotion and came running. By the time we arrived, you'd managed to wound the rogue's leg with that rusty blade. He would have killed you seconds later, but you bought enough time for us to intervene." I remembered now. The patrol appearing like salvation. The Alpha King himself killing the rogue with one brutal strike. Warriors checking on the pup, making sure he was unharmed. "I never saw you." "I know. You'd collapsed by then, exhausted and injured. We took the pup back to his mother, and I assigned someone to make sure you got medical attention. But I never forgot the girl who fought when she should have fled." My mind reeled. "That's why you claimed me? Because of something that happened 5 years ago?" "That's part of it." He moved to his desk, leaning against it. 3 years ago, there was a border skirmish with the Northern Pack. Several of our warriors were badly wounded. Our healers were overwhelmed. Some of the most critically injured. They gave up on them. Another memory. I'd been working in the pack house when word came of the casualties. I'd gone to the infirmary to help clean up and had found warriors bleeding out, dying, with no one attending to them because they were too far gone to save. "I stayed," I said slowly. "I didn't know how to heal, but I tried. I cleaned wounds. I held hands. My voice cracked. Most of them died anyway. But not all. 2 warriors survived who shouldn't have. Survived because you refused to give up on them. I came to check on the wounded around midnight and found you still there, exhausted, covered in blood, holding the hand of a wolf who had maybe an hour left to live. You were singing to him. I'd forgotten that detail. An old lullaby my mother used to sing to me. When I asked your name, Wilder continued, you were too exhausted to do anything but tell the truth. Marin. Just Marin. No title, no pretense, just a servant girl who'd spent all night trying to save wolves who weren't even her responsibility. Those are just things that happened, I said weakly. They don't mean anything. They meant everything. His voice was fierce now. In a pack where status is everything, where power determines worth, you showed me what actually matters. Courage. Compassion. The kind of strength that has nothing to do with how big your wolf is, or what bloodline you come from. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process what he was saying. He pushed off from the desk, coming closer. I was there the night you discovered the mate bond with Vane. My breath caught. You were watching me? I was watching him, making sure my brother wasn't making foolish choices. A pause. And then I saw your face when the bond snapped into place. I saw the hope light up in your eyes, the belief that finally, something good was happening to you. The memory was sharp and painful. The moment I'd felt the bond, the overwhelming joy, the certainty that everything was about to change for the better. And you said nothing, I whispered. What would I have said? His jaw tightened. That I'd been drawn to you for years? That I watched you like a fool, trying to understand why a servant girl haunted my thoughts? You had a mate. The bond is sacred. I had no right. So you just watched. While Vane made promises he never intended to keep. I hoped he would keep them. Wilder's voice dropped. I hoped I was wrong about my brother, that he'd grown past his need for approval, his obsession with status, that he'd see what I saw, someone extraordinary. But he didn't. No, he didn't. The words were heavy with disappointment. And tonight, when he rejected you, when they laughed, his hands clenched into fists. My wolf wouldn't let me stand by, and neither would I. So this was mercy? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Poor Marin, rejected and humiliated. Better save her before she does something foolish. He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides. No, this was selfishness. This was me taking what I wanted the moment I had the right to take it. We stood close enough now that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Close enough that the bond hummed with awareness, with connection, with something I didn't have words for. You don't even know me, I said, but the protest was weak. I've watched you for 5 years, Marin. I've seen you when you thought no one was looking. I've seen your courage and your kindness and your strength. I know you better than anyone in this pack. That's not the same as actually knowing someone. Then let me know you. His hand came up, hovering near my face but not quite touching. Let me prove that this isn't just mercy or duty or political maneuvering. Let me show you that when I claimed you, it wasn't to save you. It was because I couldn't let anyone else have you. The air between us crackled with tension. The claiming mark on my wrist pulsed in rhythm with my racing heart. I don't understand you, I finally said. You will. I'll give you time. He stepped back and I could breathe again. These chambers are yours. Mine are connected through that door, but I won't use it unless you invite me. You're my Luna Queen, but you're also free to choose how this arrangement proceeds. And if I choose to leave? His eyes flashed silver, his wolf rising to the surface. Then I will let you go. But I don't think you will. You're very certain. No. He smiled then, Just a slight curve of his lips, but it transformed his entire face. I'm very hopeful. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. Marin? Yes? Thank you. For taking my hand last night, for giving me a chance. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts and more questions than answers. But for the first time since the rejection, I felt something other than pain and humiliation. I felt curious, and beneath that curiosity, like a seed just beginning to sprout, I felt the faintest stirring of hope. 2 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and discovery. I learned to navigate the Luna Queen's chambers without feeling like an intruder. I learned which servants were genuinely kind and which were simply skilled at hiding their resentment. I learned to sit through formal dinners with the pack nobility, feeling their eyes on me, reading their expressions, who accepted me, who tolerated me, who waited for me to fail. Most of all, I learned about Wilder. He was patient in ways I hadn't expected. He never pushed, never demanded. Instead, he offered small moments of connection that felt more precious because they were freely given. Shared meals where conversation flowed easier with each passing day. Him teaching me pack history in the library, his voice growing animated when he spoke about the old ways, the traditions that mattered. Me slowly beginning to see the man behind the crown, the weight he carried, the loneliness of absolute authority, the way he genuinely cared about every member of the pack, even the lowest servants. You check on them, I said one evening, surprised. We were reviewing reports in his study, and I'd noticed him making notes about individual pack members. The Omegas, the servants, you know their names. Of course I do. They're my responsibility. He looked up from the papers, his gray eyes meeting mine. A king who doesn't know his people isn't really a king. He's just someone sitting on a throne. Most alphas don't think that way. Most alphas are fools. He set down his pen. Power without compassion is just tyranny, and tyranny always falls eventually. These were the moments when I forgot he was the Alpha King, when he was simply Wilder, a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders and somehow still found room to care about individual lives. But the pack's adjustment to our bond was slower, more complicated. Some accepted it with cautious optimism. Beta Kellen had been supportive from the start, going out of his way to help me understand pack politics and social dynamics. Some of the younger wolves seemed genuinely excited. A Luna Queen who'd risen from nothing gave them hope that the rigid hierarchy might change. Others were less welcoming. The nobility, especially those allied with Elder Torin, viewed me as an upstart who disrupted the natural order. They were polite to my face, but I caught their whispers, felt their disapproval like a physical weight. And then there was Vane. I'd avoided him successfully for 2 weeks. The pack house was large enough that our paths didn't have to cross, but I should have known it couldn't last forever. It was late afternoon when I ventured into the castle gardens. I'd been practicing meditation techniques that Wilder had taught me, trying to strengthen my connection with Ember. My wolf had been restless lately, stirring more frequently, feeling different in ways I couldn't articulate. Strange things had started happening too. Small things, easily dismissed. Flowers seeming to lean toward me as I passed. Birds landing fearlessly on my shoulders, chirping as if trying to communicate. A wounded rabbit I'd found near the garden wall. I'd touched it gently, meaning only comfort, and its injuries had begun to close. I told myself I was imagining it, seeing patterns that didn't exist. But Ember knew better. Something's changing in us, she whispered. Something's waking up. I was sitting on a stone bench near the hedge maze, eyes closed, breathing in the scent of late autumn roses, when footsteps approached. Marin, wait! My eyes snapped open. Vane stood a few feet away, looking nothing like the golden prince who'd rejected me 2 weeks ago. His hair was disheveled, his clothes rumpled, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his expression was haunted. "Can we talk? Please?" Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to refuse him even this small interaction. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe a need for closure, made me nod. He sat on the bench, careful to leave space between us. For a long moment, he just stared at the roses, gathering words. "I made a terrible mistake," he finally said. "The worst mistake of my life." I said nothing, waited. I felt the bond between us. I know I did. That night at the harvest moon, it was real, Marin. The pull, the connection, everything I told you afterward, all those promises. His voice cracked. I meant them. In that moment, I truly meant them. But not enough to keep them. No. The admission was quiet, heavy with regret. The pack's expectations, the pressure from the elders, from the nobility. They all said the same thing, that I needed a strong Luna, someone from a powerful bloodline, that choosing you would weaken my position, make me look foolish. So you chose Zora. You chose power. I chose wrong. His voice rose, desperate now. Zora is cold, calculating. Every decision I make, every word I speak, she criticizes it, corrects it, tells me how I should have done better. The bond I thought we'd form, the partnership I imagined. It's hollow, Marin. Empty. He turned to face me fully. But what we had, what we could have, we had nothing, Vane. My voice was steady, surprising even myself. You had a convenient Omega who worshipped you. I had a dream. That's not fair, isn't it? I stood, unable to sit beside him any longer. You made promises in private and broke them in public. You let them mock me, humiliate me. You stood there and did nothing while Zora tore me apart in front of the entire pack. I know. His face crumpled. I know, and I hate myself for it. But I'm here now, asking for another chance. We could... He reached for my hand. I stepped back. No. Marin, please. I said no. The rejection was simple, final, and it felt like freedom. She gave you my answer when she stepped back. Wilder's voice cut through the garden air like thunder before a storm. He emerged from the shadow of the hedge maze, and his presence transformed the space. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely controlled power. Vane's face went pale. How long have you been there? Long enough? Wilder moved to stand beside me, and I felt his hands settle at the small of my back, possessive but not controlling, protective but not suffocating. Long enough to hear my brother make excuses for his weakness. This doesn't concern you. Everything concerning my mate concerns me. The word mate hung in the air between them. Not Luna Queen. Not claimed. Mate. Vane's jaw clenched. You want to know the difference between us, brother? Wilder's voice was quiet, deadly. When I saw something precious, I claimed it. When you saw something precious, you wondered what everyone else would think. That's not... You rejected her because you cared more about appearances than about her, about power than about honor, about what the nobility would say than about keeping your word. Vane's anger flared. You wanted her. Even before the ceremony, you wanted her. You watched us together and you were jealous. The accusation hung heavy in the garden air. Yes. Wilder's admission was simple, devastating. I've wanted her since the moment I saw her fight a rogue twice her size to protect a pup she didn't know. I've wanted her through every condescending comment you and your friends made about her. I wanted her when you touched her hand and smiled your charming smile, making her believe you were her future. My breath caught. He'd never mentioned being there for that moment at the Harvest Moon gathering. Never told me he'd witnessed the bond forming between me and Vane. Wilder's eyes were molten silver now, his wolf close to the surface. But I am the Alpha King. I do not take what belongs to another, not even from you. The mate bond is sacred. I had no right to interfere. Then why did you claim her? Vane demanded. The moment I rejected her, you were there, like you'd been waiting for it. I claimed her because you freed her. Each word was precisely measured. You rejected her. You severed the bond. You threw away something precious because you're too weak to stand against social pressure. I simply refused to let anyone else make the same mistake. You're in love with her. Silence, heavy, weighted with truth. Wilder didn't deny it. What I feel is none of your concern. She is my Luna Queen. She is under my protection, and you will never approach her like this again. Or what? You'll banish your own brother? If I have to. The words fell like stones into still water. Vane stared at Wilder, and I saw the moment he truly understood. He'd lost not just me, but his brother's respect, his place in the family hierarchy, everything he'd taken for granted. I've lost you both, haven't I? His voice was hollow. You lost us the moment you put pride above honor, Wilder said. The moment you chose comfort over courage. The moment you stood in that ceremony hall and humiliated the woman the moon goddess chose for you. Vane looked at me, his expression pleading. Marin. He's right, I said quietly. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. He left without another word, shoulders slumped, the golden prince diminished. I stood in the garden with Wilder, processing what had just happened. What had just been said? Did you mean it? I asked finally. What you said about wanting me. He turned to face me fully, and there was no mask now, no Alpha King authority. Just a man being honest. Every word. Why didn't you tell me? Because you deserved time. Time to heal from Vane's rejection. Time to choose, to know me as something other than your rescuer. Time to understand that what's between us isn't just duty or gratitude or politics. He stepped closer, and the bond between us hummed with awareness. I didn't want you to feel obligated. Didn't want you to accept me because you had nowhere else to go, or because I'm the Alpha King and you're afraid to refuse. And now I'm terrified. A slight smile touched his lips. Terrified you'll realize you deserve better than a king who claims what he wants. Terrified you'll wake up one day and understand that you could have anyone, be anything, and you're wasting your life with me. I laughed, the sound surprising us both. You're not what I expected. Wilder Blackwood. Is that good or bad? I'm still deciding, but my smile said otherwise. And when he offered his hand, I took it without hesitation. We walked back toward the pack house together, and for the first time since the ceremony, I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace. Too much was still uncertain. Too much still needed to be resolved. But something close to it. Behind us, in the garden, the roses bloomed brighter than they had all season. Birds sang in voices sweeter than normal. And in the shadows of the hedge maze, something ancient stirred, responding to a power that was only beginning to wake. 4 weeks after the claiming ceremony, I woke from a dream that felt more like a memory. I was running through an ancient forest as a massive silver wolf. Trees older than the pack itself rose around me, their roots thick and gnarled. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, turning everything into a landscape of silver and shadow. A black wolf ran beside me. Wilder's wolf. I knew it without question. We moved in perfect synchronization, two halves of one whole. The forest responded to our passage, branches bending away from our path, flowers blooming in our wake, the very earth seeming to welcome us home. Then voices, calling my name in a language I didn't understand but somehow recognized. Ancient words that made my bones vibrate and my soul ache with longing. Come home, daughter of the silver line. Come home and remember who you are. I jolted awake, gasping, my heart racing. My eyes burned with a strange heat, and when I stumbled to the mirror, they flashed gold before fading back to their usual brown. Ember was fully awake in my mind, more alert than I'd ever felt her. "Did you see it?" she asked urgently. "Did you see what we could be?" I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because I didn't understand what I'd seen. The strange occurrences had been increasing in frequency over the past weeks. No longer small, easily dismissed incidents. Now they were impossible to ignore. 3 days ago, I'd been walking through the pack gardens when every flower within 10 feet had burst into bloom simultaneously. Roses, jasmine, even winter flowers that shouldn't have been growing at all. The gardener had stared in shock, unable to explain what had happened. 2 days ago, I'd visited the pack infirmary to bring supplies. A young warrior lay dying from wounds sustained in a border dispute. The healers had given up, preparing his family for the inevitable. I'd touched his shoulder, meaning only comfort, and watched in amazement as his wounds began to close, flesh knitting together, infection draining away. He'd opened his eyes and smiled at me. Yesterday, I'd been so overwhelmed by the bond with Wilder, feeling his presence from across the pack house, sensing his emotions as clearly as my own, that I'd had to excuse myself from dinner and spend an hour in the Luna Queen's chambers just trying to understand what was happening to me. Something was changing, something fundamental, and I was terrified. "Luna Queen?" Nola knocked softly on my door. "Elder Reverie Sunder requests your presence in her chambers. She says it's urgent." My stomach dropped. Reverie Sunder was the pack's witch, ancient, powerful, keeper of secrets and old knowledge. If she wanted to see me, something was wrong. An hour later, I stood in Reverie's chambers deep in the oldest part of the pack house. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and incense. Crystals hung from the ceiling, catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. Shelves lined every available surface, filled with bottles and books and objects I couldn't identify. Reverie herself sat in a high-backed chair, studying me with eyes that had seen centuries. She was impossibly old, her face lined with age, her hair white as snow. But her gaze was sharp, penetrating, missing nothing. "Sit, child," she said, gesturing to a cushion on the floor before her. I sat, my hands trembling slightly. She leaned forward, examining me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. Then she began the examination, spreading herbs around me in precise patterns, hanging crystals at specific points, speaking words in the old tongue that made the air itself vibrate. Halfway through, she stopped. Her face went pale, and her hands shook as she set down the crystal she'd been holding. "Hallow Heart," she whispered. "By the moon goddess, I should have known." My heart hammered. What? What does my name mean? Not what, child. Who? She stood with surprising agility for someone so ancient, moving to one of her bookshelves and pulling out a massive tome bound in aged leather. She flipped through pages until she found what she was looking for. Your name isn't just a name. It's a bloodline. The Hallowheart line. The healers. The life-bringers. The moon goddess's chosen daughters. She turned the book toward me. The page showed an illustration of a massive silver wolf with a crescent moon marking on its neck. Around it, flowers bloomed and animals gathered, drawn by an invisible force. I don't understand. 70 years ago, there was a purge. Reverie's voice was heavy with old grief. Rival packs feared the Hallowheart power, the ability to heal mortal wounds, to command nature itself. to bring life where there was only death. They saw it as a threat to the natural order, so they hunted the silver wolves, killed entire families, destroyed bloodlines that had existed for thousands of years. My mouth went dry. Everyone thought the line died out? We believed the purge was complete, that the last Hallowheart perished in the flames. She looked at me with something like awe. Your mother must have hidden her nature, suppressed her wolf, lived as ordinary to protect you, to keep you safe from those who would fear what you could become. My mother was powerful? The idea seemed impossible. My mother had been a servant, quiet and unremarkable. She'd told me to stay invisible, to never draw attention. Your mother was likely one of the last true Hallowhearts. And you— Reverie's voice dropped to a whisper. You carry the full strength of the line, undiluted, pure. Possibly stronger than any Hallowheart who came before, because your power has been compressed, suppressed, waiting to emerge. The door opened. Wilder entered, his expression tense. Reverie sent for me. What's happened? The witch gestured him closer. Your mate, Alpha King, is not what she appears. Not what any of us believed. She explained quickly, showing him the book, the history, the implications. I watched his face shift from confusion to understanding to something that looked almost like recognition. That's why I was drawn to her, he said softly. Not just attraction. Recognition. My wolf knew hers. Reverie nodded. The silver wolves were meant to mate with the strongest alphas, to balance power with healing, strength with compassion. It's why the bond between you feels different, stronger than normal mate bonds. You're not just compatible, you're complementary. Two halves of an ancient pairing. Are you saying we're fated mates? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I'm saying the moon goddess works in mysterious ways. Reverie closed the book gently. What Vane felt was surface attraction, amplified by proximity and desire. What you two share runs deeper than bloodlines, deeper than choice. Your souls recognized each other. She turned to me, her ancient eyes serious. But your power is waking, child, and it needs to be properly awakened, or it will continue to manifest in dangerous, uncontrolled ways. You need to shift, to let your wolf show her true form. Fear clenched my stomach. What if I can't? What if I'm still weak? Wilder moved to my side, his hand finding mine. You were never weak. You were sleeping. That night, under the full moon, Wilder led me to the sacred shifting grounds deep in pack territory. It was a clearing I'd never seen before, ringed by ancient standing stones carved with runes that glowed faintly silver in the moonlight. Other wolves gathered at a respectful distance. Beta Kellen, Elder Reverie, a handful of the pack's most trusted members. They sensed something momentous was about to happen. I stood in the center of the clearing, trembling, while Wilder held both my hands. What if I can't? I whispered. What if nothing happens? Then nothing happens, and we try again another night. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think your wolf has been waiting for this moment her entire life. I'm scared. I know. He cupped my face gently. But I'm here. I won't leave you. Whatever happens, you're not alone. I closed my eyes and reached for Ember. For weeks she'd been stirring, growing stronger, feeling different. Now I called to her fully, without fear or reservation. Ready? I asked. We were born ready, she responded, and her voice was powerful, confident, nothing like the weak whisper I'd known for years. The shift began. It was nothing like the painful, awkward transformations I'd experienced before. This was agony and ecstasy combined. Bones reshaping with purpose, muscles expanding with power, fur erupting in a cascade of sensation that was almost overwhelming. I felt myself growing, changing, becoming something I'd never been before. When I opened my eyes, the world was transformed. Sharper, brighter, more alive than I'd ever seen it. I could smell everything. The individual wolves gathered around the clearing, the ancient magic in the standing stones, the life force of every plant and animal within 100 yards. I looked down at my paws. They were massive, powerful, nothing like the small, weak paws I'd known. I caught my reflection in a pool of water near the stones. The wolf staring back at me was magnificent. Silver-white fur that seemed to glow in the moonlight, catching and reflecting illumination until I looked like I was made of starlight itself. I was nearly as large as an alpha's wolf, larger than Zora, larger than most male warriors. My eyes burned pure gold, and around my neck, a natural marking in darker fur formed the shape of a crescent moon. The pack gasped collectively. Beta Kellen's voice broke the stunned silence. The moon's mark. She's true-born Hallowheart. Elder Reverie fell to her knees, tears streaming down her ancient face. We thought you were extinct. The purge 70 years ago. We thought we'd lost you forever. Other wolves began kneeling, one by one, recognizing what I was. Who I was. Then Wilder shifted beside me. His black wolf was massive, powerful, radiating authority. We stood side by side for a moment. Silver and black, light and shadow. Two halves of something ancient and powerful. Then we ran. We burst from the clearing and into the forest, and the world exploded into sensation. I'd never felt anything like this. The earth beneath my paws sang with life force. Trees bent slightly as we passed, acknowledging us. Animals watched from the shadows without fear, recognizing something in me that called to them. And stronger than anything, I felt Wilder. His joy as we ran together. His pride in my transformation. His love. Because it was love, I could feel it now. Undeniable and overwhelming. The mate bond wasn't what I'd felt with Vane. That had been a false echo, a shadow of the real thing. This was all-consuming, unbreakable, soul-deep. This was finding the other half of myself that I hadn't known was missing. I stumbled, overwhelmed by the intensity of it. Wilder's wolf pressed against my side immediately, steadying me. Our eyes met, and the bond fully snapped into place. Not the claiming bond from the ceremony, but the true mate bond that had been waiting to manifest. I felt everything. His emotions, his presence, his very essence. And I knew he felt the same from me. We shifted back to human form. Someone had left clothes for us, and we dressed quickly, neither of us speaking, both trying to process what had just happened. I feel you, I finally whispered. Even now, I feel you. Your emotions, your presence. It's like you're part of me. The true mate bond. His voice was rough with emotion. My wolf recognized you from the first moment, but I needed you to feel it too. To know it wasn't just me claiming you because I could, but because we're meant to be together. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? He pulled me close, and I melted into his embrace. Or would you have thought I was manipulating you, claiming a bond that wasn't there to justify the claiming? The bond with Vane was incomplete, superficial. Some wolves can mistake attraction or compatibility for destiny, especially when one party desperately wants it to be true. So he wasn't really my mate? He could have been, if he'd chosen you, If you'd both work to build something real. Wilder's arms tightened around me. But true mates choose each other, in this life and whatever comes after. My soul knows yours, Marin. It's known you since the moment we met, and it will know you until the stars go dark. I finally understood. I wasn't broken. I'd never been broken. I'd been sleeping, waiting, preparing for this moment when everything would change. I choose you, I whispered against his chest. Not because you're a king, not because you saved me, but because when you look at me, I see myself the way I was always meant to be seen. And how is that? Whole. We sealed the bond properly then, not with words or ceremony, but with a kiss that felt like coming home. The claiming marks on our wrists glowed and expanded, intertwining until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. This was the real claiming, witnessed only by the moon, chosen freely by both, sealed in love instead of duty. When we finally returned to the clearing, the assembled wolves were still there, waiting. They knelt as we approached, not from duty but from genuine respect. I was no longer just the servant girl who'd been claimed out of mercy. I was Marin Hallowheart, last daughter of the Silver Line, Luna Queen of the Shadow Pine Pack. And I was finally, truly awake. 4 weeks after my awakening, the new moon gathering arrived. It was a tradition as old as the pack itself. Every season, when the moon went dark, all regional packs assembled at Shadowpine to renew alliances, settle disputes, and reaffirm the bonds that held Wolf Society together. Alphas from neighboring territories came with their betas and advisors, filling the great hall with hundreds of wolves, all watching, all judging. I stood beside Wilder on the dais, wearing a gown that actually fit this time, deep forest green that Nola had helped me choose. The claiming mark on my wrist was visible, no longer hidden. I'd learned to carry myself differently in the past weeks, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. I was still learning what it meant to be Luna Queen, but I was no longer pretending I didn't belong. The hall buzzed with conversation as wolves greeted old allies and sized up potential rivals. I caught fragments of whispers about me, some admiring, some skeptical, all curious about the servant girl who'd become queen and discovered she was something far more. Wilder's hand found mine briefly, a gesture of support that sent warmth through the bond. "You're doing well," he murmured. "Half the alphas here are already impressed by your composure. And the other half are waiting for you to prove yourself." He smiled slightly. "Let them wait." The formal proceedings began. Alliances were renewed with ceremonial words and ritual gestures. Disputes were brought before Wilder for judgment. He handled each with the careful balance of strength and fairness that made him respected, even by those who disagreed with his decisions. I watched and learned, beginning to understand the delicate web of pack politics that governed our world. Then Elder Torin rose from his seat among the council members. My stomach clenched. I'd barely seen him since the claiming ceremony, but I knew he hadn't accepted what Wilder had done. He represented the old guard, wolves who believed in rigid hierarchy and bloodline purity above all else. "Alpha King," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "If I may address a matter of pack law." Wilder's expression didn't change, but I felt tension ripple through the bond. "Speak." "It concerns the position of Luna Queen." The hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward the dais. "I question nothing about your right to choose a mate," Torin continued, his tone carefully respectful. "However, there are those among us," he gestured to several noble families seated near the front, "who have concerns about whether an untested Luna is suited to her position." "Untested?" I asked before I could stop myself. "In what way?" Torin's eyes fixed on me. "You were a servant 4 weeks ago. You had never led warriors. never made decisions affecting the pack's welfare, never demonstrated the qualities we expect in a Luna Queen. She demonstrated those qualities for years, Wilder said, his voice sharp. You simply didn't notice because you only see what confirms your prejudices. Be that as it may, Torin gestured again. And I realized with growing dread that this was planned, coordinated. There is a legal mechanism to address such concerns. That's when Zora Ironpaw rose from her seat. She looked different than she had at the claiming ceremony. Harder, more focused. She wore fighting leathers instead of silk, and her amber eyes held calculated determination rather than simple anger. I invoke the ancient right, she said clearly. I challenge Luna Queen Marin Hallowheart's right to her position. The hall erupted. Gasps, shouts, wolves rising from their seats. Wilder was on his feet immediately, power radiating from him in waves. You dare! It is her right under pack law, Elder Torin interrupted. Ancient law, Alpha King. Even you are bound by it. Beta Kellen appeared at Wilder's side, his expression grim. He's correct. The challenge is legal. Zora stepped forward, addressing the assembled wolves. I don't do this out of spite or jealousy. I do it because the pack deserves a Luna Queen who has proven herself. Marin was an Omega with a weak wolf. Yes, she's shown power recently, but it's untested, unproven. How can we trust our safety, our future, to someone who has never faced real challenge? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Not everyone. Many wolves looked uncomfortable with the challenge, but enough to make it clear this wasn't just Zora's agenda. The challenge is simple, Torin said. As outlined in pack law, 2 wolves fight in their shifted forms, witnessed by the full pack. The winner proves her right to the position. This is unnecessary, Wilder said, and I could feel his barely controlled rage through the bond. My mate has already proven herself. To you, perhaps. Zora's voice was steady. But not to the pack. Not in the way our laws require. I stood frozen, my mind racing. This was more than a challenge to my position. This was a challenge to Wilder's authority, to the changes he'd begun to implement, to everything we represented. And refusing would only prove their point, that I was too weak, too afraid to defend what was mine. I accept, I said quietly. Marin, no. Wilder turned to me, his eyes flashing silver. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I met his gaze steadily. If I refuse, they'll always question whether I deserve to be here, whether you made a mistake claiming me. This is the only way to end the doubt. She could kill you. She could try. I looked past him to Zora, who watched with grim satisfaction. When? Tomorrow night, Elder Torin answered. At the ancient challenge circle, witnessed by the full pack, as tradition demands. The gathering dissolved into chaos after that, wolves arguing, taking sides, speculating about the outcome. Wilder led me from the hall quickly, his hand firm on my arm. We didn't speak until we reached his private chambers. Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. There has to be another way, he said against my hair. I won't risk you. I can't. You're not risking me. I'm choosing this. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I've spent my whole life being told I'm not enough, being looked at like I don't belong, like I'm only here by accident or mercy. This ends tomorrow. Marin, let them see the truth, Wilder. Let them see what they created when they tried to break me. His jaw clenched, but he finally nodded. Then we prepare. Zora is trained, experienced. She's fought in dozens of challenges and never lost. I'm a Hallowheart. My eyes flashed gold. And I'm done being invisible. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Wilder insisted on training me, though we both knew it was more about channeling anxiety than actual preparation. My power wasn't something that could be taught. It simply was. But being with him helped. Feeling his presence through the bond, his fierce protectiveness, his absolute faith in me. "Promise me something," he said as the sun began to set. We were in his chambers, and he was braiding my hair, a simple gesture that felt impossibly intimate. "What?" "If you're losing, if she has you beaten, submit. Your pride isn't worth your life." I caught his hands, stilling them. "I'm not doing this for pride. I'm doing this so no one ever questions your choice again. So every Omega, every servant, every wolf who's been told they don't matter can see that we're not broken. We're just waiting for our moment." His fingers tightened on mine. "You terrify me sometimes. Your courage, your strength. I've faced down rival alphas and rogue armies, and nothing has ever scared me as much as the thought of losing you. You won't lose me." I turned to face him fully. "I promise." As darkness fell, we made our way to the ancient challenge circle. It was a natural amphitheater deep in pack territory, formed by a ring of massive stones that had stood for thousands of years. Torches burned at the cardinal points, casting dancing shadows. The full pack was already assembled, hundreds of wolves forming a circle around the fighting ground. I saw familiar faces in the crowd. Beta Kellen, his expression tense but supportive. Elder Reverie, watching with ancient eyes that held secrets. Vane, standing near the back, his face unreadable. And everywhere, wolves waiting to see if the servant girl could possibly defeat a trained warrior. Zora stood in the center of the circle, wearing ceremonial fighting garb, leather and steel, marked with her family's crest. She looked confident, deadly, every inch the warrior she'd been trained to be. I wore simple clothes, no armor, no weapons, just myself. We faced each other across the circle as Elder Torin raised his hands for silence. "This challenge is witnessed by the moon goddess and the full pack," he intoned. "Two wolves will fight in their true forms. The winner claims the position of Luna Queen. The loser submits or dies. These are the ancient laws. Does anyone contest them?" Silence. "Then let the challenge begin." Zora shifted first. Her transformation was fast, practiced, efficient. Within seconds, a massive russet wolf stood where the woman had been, easily twice the size of a normal female wolf, with amber eyes that burned with fierce determination. She was magnificent, a warrior bred from generations of powerful bloodlines. The crowd murmured appreciation. Some wolves nodded, as if this only confirmed what they'd always believed, that this was what a Luna should look like. A few glanced at me with pity. I closed my eyes and reached for Ember. Ready? We were born ready. The shift was different this time. Faster than before, smoother, as if my body had finally remembered what it was meant to be. Bones reshaped with purpose, muscles expanded with power, fur erupted in a cascade of silver white that caught the torchlight and threw it back like starlight. When I opened my eyes, the world was sharp and bright and alive. I stood there, massive and powerful, the crescent moon marking glowing on my neck. My silver white coat shimmered in the firelight, and my eyes burned pure gold. Complete silence fell over the challenge circle. Then gasps, scattered cries of shock. Wolves pressing forward, straining to see. I was larger than Zora. Larger than most alpha males. The very air around me seemed to vibrate with power. Not aggressive, but undeniable. Ancient. Elder Kellen's voice broke the stunned silence. The silver line. The moon's daughters. His voice cracked with emotion. "By the goddess, we thought you were extinct. Beta Rowan Ashworth, another elder I recognized, fell to her knees. The purge 70 years ago. We thought we'd lost them all. But I wasn't focused on the crowd. I was focused on Zora. Her amber eyes had widened in shock, her confident stance faltering. She'd expected to face a weak Omega, an untested wolf who'd gotten lucky with her bloodline discovery. She hadn't expected this. For a moment, neither of us moved. The challenge circle held its breath. Then Zora lunged. She was fast, trained, experienced, knowing exactly how to use her size and strength. Her attack was precise, aimed at my throat, meant to end this quickly. But I wasn't there. I moved like water, like wind, like moonlight. Her jaws snapped shut on empty air as I flowed around her attack. She spun, lunging again. And again, I wasn't where she expected me to be. This wasn't instinct. This was something deeper. Knowledge that came from my bloodline. From thousands of years of Hallowhearts who'd learned to fight not with brutality, but with grace. Zora snarled in frustration and changed tactics. She circled, feinted left, then attacked from the right. A move that should have caught me off guard. I met her charge head-on this time, and our bodies collided with a force that echoed through the amphitheater. She was strong, but I was stronger. She was fast, but I was faster. We broke apart, circling each other. She was breathing hard now, beginning to realize she couldn't win through simple combat. She attacked again, and again, and again. Each time I deflected her, avoided her, turned her own momentum against her. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was teaching her. The difference between us wasn't size or strength or training. It was purpose. Finally, I saw my opening. She lunged, overextended, desperate now. I moved with precision born of instinct older than memory, and suddenly she was on the ground, pinned, my jaws at her throat. The kill would be justified, expected, traditional. I could feel her pulse hammering against my teeth, smell her fear, her realization that she'd miscalculated everything. I released her, stepped back, shifted to human form. Someone threw me a cloak, and I wrapped it around myself, standing in the center of the challenge circle with Zora's wolf still on the ground before me. You challenged me because you think strength is about size, about power, about bloodline, I said, addressing not just Zora, but the entire assembled pack. My voice carried through the amphitheater. But that's not what a Luna is. A Luna protects. A Luna heals. A Luna sees the worth in every member of her pack, from the strongest alpha to the smallest omega. I found familiar faces in the crowd. Wolves who'd mocked me, dismissed me, treated me as invisible. You all taught me that the hard way. You taught me I'd have to be stronger than any of you to survive. So I became strong. I paused, letting the words sink in. But not for your approval. For me. And for every Omega, every servant, every wolf who's been told they don't matter. Zora shifted back to human form. She knelt, head bowed, and I saw tears on her face. Luna Queen, she said, and her voice shook. I submit. It wasn't fear in her voice. It was recognition. Understanding. I hadn't just defeated her. I'd shown her what she'd been missing all along. Rise, I said gently. There's no shame in losing to a better fighter. Only shame in learning nothing from the loss. She stood, and I saw something different in her eyes now. Respect, hard-earned and genuine. Then Elder Reverie stepped forward from the crowd, her ancient face set in grim determination. In her hands, she carried a small wooden box. There's something the pack needs to know, she said, her voice carrying through the sudden silence. Something that explains much of what has happened. She opened the box, revealing herbs and documents, evidence she'd been gathering for weeks. During my examinations of Luna Queen Marin, I found traces of suppressants in her system, powerful ones, administered over years. She held up a dried plant that looked like nightshade. This is wolfsbane mixed with moonsbane, a combination that suppresses a wolf's true nature, keeps them weak, makes them easy to control. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I found the same herbs in Zora Ironpaw's chambers, Reverie continued. Not because she was taking them, because she was using them. On someone else. Zora's face went pale. I didn't know what they were. Elder Torin gave them to me. Said they were enhancers for my training. You were being used, Reverie said, not unkindly. As was Vane. Documents I found in Elder Torin's quarters reveal the full conspiracy. He's been planning this for years, suppressing Marin's wolf to keep her weak and unnoticed, manipulating Vane's perception to make him more susceptible to suggestion. Pushing for a match between you and the prince. She turned to face Elder Torin, who'd gone very still in his seat among the council. You wanted to combine two powerful bloodlines through Vane and Zora. You wanted the Alpha King isolated, unmated, easier to influence. And eventually, she pulled out more documents. You planned to stage a coup, to remove Wilder from power and install Vane as a puppet king. The amphitheater erupted. Shouts, accusations, wolves surging forward. Elder Torin rose, trying to flee, but Beta Kellen was faster. He shifted and blocked the exit, his massive wolf form ensuring the Elder couldn't escape. Wilder descended into the challenge circle, his presence commanding instant silence. He took the documents from Reverie, reading them quickly, his expression growing colder with each line. Elder Torin Stoneledge, he said, and his voice was absolute authority. You stand accused of conspiracy against the Alpha King, manipulation of pack members, and attempting to suppress the bloodline of a Hallowheart. Crimes punishable by death or banishment. Torin's defiance crumbled. I only wanted what was best for the pack. Strong bloodlines, proper hierarchy. You wanted power. Wilder's voice was ice. And you were willing to destroy lives to get it. He turned to address the full pack. My judgment is final. Elder Torin is banished from Shadowpine lands, never to return. His co-conspirators, he named several nobles who'd been identified in the documents, are stripped of titles and placed under watch. Any who object may join them in exile. No one objected. Wilder turned to Zora, who stood trembling, awaiting her fate. You cooperated once the conspiracy was revealed. You were being manipulated, used as a tool. For that, you'll be demoted from your position but permitted to stay. You'll earn your way back through service to the pack. Relief flooded her face. Thank you, Alpha King. I won't waste this chance. Then his eyes found Vane in the crowd. His brother looked smaller somehow, diminished. Vane Nightgate, Wilder said, and there was pain beneath the authority now. You knew some of what was happening. The documents show you were aware of Torin's influence, aware that something was wrong with the mate bond you felt for Marin. Yet you did nothing. Vane's head bowed. I was weak. I wanted what I wanted, and I convinced myself the rest didn't matter. Your title as heir apparent is revoked. The pack will choose its next heir through merit, not bloodline. You may remain as a warrior and teacher, but you'll earn respect rather than expect it by birth. It was a devastating blow, but fair. Vane nodded acceptance, unable to meet his brother's eyes. Finally, Wilder turned to me. He crossed the distance between us and took both my hands in his. My Luna, my queen, my mate. His voice dropped, meant only for me, though the entire pack could hear. You've proven beyond any doubt that you deserve to stand beside me. Not because I claimed you, not because of your bloodline, but because of who you are. He pulled me close and kissed me before the entire assembled pack. A public claiming that was also a declaration of love. When we broke apart, the pack erupted in howls of approval. Not everyone, but most. Enough. The challenge circle cleared slowly. Wolves dispersing with much to discuss. But many stopped to bow to me first, acknowledging what I'd proven tonight. I stood in the center of the ancient stones, surrounded by the pack that had once dismissed me, wearing a cloak instead of armor, and felt the weight of transformation settle over me. I was no longer the servant girl who'd been rejected. I was Marin Hallowheart, Luna Queen of Shadowpine, last daughter of the Silver Line. And this was only the beginning. 3 months had passed since the challenge, and winter had settled over Shadowpine territory like a blanket of crystallized starlight. I stood at the window of the chambers I now truly shared with Wilder, watching snow fall over the packlands. The morning sun turned everything golden, and the world looked reborn, transformed, much like I had been. The winter gathering was tonight, all the regional packs assembling once more, but this time not to question my right to be here, but to witness what Shadowpine had become under our joined leadership. "You're thinking too hard." Wilder's voice came from behind me. His arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. I can feel it through the bond. I smiled, leaning into his warmth. The bond between us had only grown stronger over these past months. A constant presence, a continuous connection that made me feel complete in ways I'd never imagined possible. "Just reflecting," I said, "about how different everything is now." "Tell me." So I did. I told him about the changes we'd implemented together. The medical wing had been expanded, with new healers trained in methods I'd learned from my Hallowheart abilities. We'd saved dozens of lives that would have been lost before. Warriors wounded in border disputes, pups born too weak to survive, elders succumbing to illnesses that were now treatable. The Omega Welfare Council I'd established, giving voice to wolves who'd never had representation before. They brought concerns directly to me, and I brought them to Wilder. Together, we'd reformed working conditions, improved living quarters, created pathways for advancement that didn't depend solely on combat prowess or bloodline. Young wolves being mentored regardless of rank. I spent time each week in the training grounds, teaching not just combat, but the philosophy behind being a strong pack member. Some of the most promising students were former servants, Omegas who'd never believed they could be anything more. Border security strengthened not through increased aggression, but through better communication and strategic alliances. Other packs had watched Shadowpine's transformation with interest, and several had approached us about forming partnerships. The pack wasn't just strong anymore. It was unified, purposeful, a place where every wolf could find their value. "You did that," Wilder murmured against my hair. "You transformed this pack." "We did it together," I corrected. "I couldn't have done any of it without your support. And I couldn't have seen what needed changing without your eyes showing me." He turned me to face him. "You know what today is, don't you?" My heart skipped. The winter gathering. And his eyes danced with something I couldn't quite identify. And I don't know. What am I missing? He laughed. The sound warm and genuine. 3 months ago today, you stood in the challenge circle and proved to the entire pack that you belonged. I thought we should mark the occasion. From his pocket, he pulled a small wooden box. My breath caught. "This isn't what you think," he said quickly. "We're already mated, already bound. This is something different." He opened the box to reveal a necklace, delicate silver chain with a pendant shaped like a crescent moon, inlaid with stones that shimmered silver and black. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "It represents us, silver and black, light and shadow, the moon that binds all wolves." He lifted it from the box. "Turn around." I did, and he fastened it around my neck. The pendant settled just below my collarbone, warm against my skin. "Perfect," he said softly. A knock interrupted the moment. Nola's voice came through the door. "Luna Queen? The guests are beginning to arrive for the gathering." "Thank you, Nola. We'll be down shortly." I took a moment to dress carefully. An elegant gown in deep midnight blue that Nola had helped me choose. Practical enough to move in, but beautiful enough to make a statement. The claiming mark on my wrist was visible, the silver lines that bound me to Wilder. The moon pendant gleamed at my throat. Together we descended to the great hall. It was magnificent. Decorated for the winter gathering with evergreen branches and silver ribbons. The scent of pine and cinnamon heavy in the air. Wolves from every regional pack filled the space. Hundreds of them, all in their finest clothes. All here to celebrate the season and reaffirm alliances. Wilder and I took our positions at the entrance, greeting each pack as they arrived. This was my first time officially hosting as Luna Queen, and I was determined to do it right. "Alpha Marcus of Ironwood Pack," I said, extending my hand to a grizzled older wolf. "Thank you for traveling so far in winter weather." He clasped my hand with genuine warmth. "Luna Queen Marin, I've heard remarkable things about what you've accomplished here. My pack would be honored to learn from your methods." "Perhaps we can discuss an exchange program," I suggested. "Your pack's forestry management techniques are legendary. We could learn much from each other." His eyes lit up. We talked for several minutes about potential collaboration before the next pack arrived. And so it went. Alpha after alpha, beta after beta, each greeting bringing new conversations, new opportunities. I greeted every wolf with the same respect, regardless of their rank. I remembered names, asked about families, showed genuine interest in their lives. This was what a Luna did. Not just fight or display power, but connect. Build bridges, see the value in every wolf. A small commotion near the entrance caught my attention. A young child from one of the visiting packs, maybe 5 years old, was crying, overwhelmed by the crowd and noise. Her parents tried to calm her, but she was too frightened. I excused myself from the alpha I'd been speaking with and knelt down to the child's level. "Hello?" I said gently. "What's your name?" Luna," she hiccuped through tears. "Like you." I smiled. "That's a beautiful name. Are you scared of all the people?" She nodded, still crying. "Would you like to see something special?" She nodded again, curious now despite her fear. I closed my eyes and shifted, but only my eyes, maintaining the control I'd been practicing. When I opened them, they burned pure gold, wolf eyes in a human face. The little girl's tears stopped immediately. "Pretty," she breathed. "Your wolf eyes will be pretty too, when you're old enough to shift," I told her. And you know what? Every wolf here, no matter how scary they seem, they all remember being little and frightened sometimes. She giggled, reaching out to touch my face. Her parents watched with expressions of gratitude and awe. I shifted my eyes back and stood, giving the girl one last smile before returning to Wilder's side. "You're extraordinary," he murmured. "Do you know that?" "I'm just me, the me I was always meant to be." The evening progressed beautifully. Formal proceedings renewed alliances and settled minor disputes. The feast was abundant, the music lively. Wolves danced and celebrated, and for the first time in memory, the different packs mingled freely, sharing stories and forging new connections. During a quiet moment, I noticed Vane across the hall. He stood with a group of younger wolves, teaching them something, probably combat techniques, based on the movements they were mimicking. He looked different than he had 3 months ago. Humbler, more focused. He'd been working hard to earn back respect through service rather than expecting it by birthright. He trained warriors, mentored troubled young wolves, took on tasks that needed doing without complaint. When he noticed me watching, he approached and bowed formally. Luna Queen. Vane. I gestured for him to rise. How are you? Better. He glanced back at the young wolves he'd been teaching. Finding purpose. Understanding what actually matters. He paused. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the self-serving attempt in the garden. You don't. I do. His voice was firm. I was weak when I should have been strong. I chose appearances over honor. I hurt you because I was too cowardly to stand against social pressure. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I studied him for a moment. There was no charm now. No golden prince persona. Just genuine remorse and hard-won maturity. We all have paths to walk, I said finally. I'm glad you're finding yours. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. He returned to his students, and I felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, that would take time, but acceptance. The past was the past, and we were both different people now. Later in the evening, Zora approached. She wore the uniform of the pack guard, having worked her way up from basic patrol to a position of minor leadership through sheer determination and skill. Luna Queen, she said, nervous but determined. May I speak with you? I gestured permission, stepping aside to a quieter corner. I wanted to apologize, properly, without excuses. She met my eyes directly. I let ambition blind me to what actually matters. I thought strength was about power and dominance and proving I was better than everyone else. You didn't just defeat me in that circle. You taught me what strength really looks like. And what does it look like? Compassion, protection, seeing value in others instead of just seeing competition. She smiled slightly. I've been working with the Omega Welfare Council, helping implement security improvements for their quarters. It's humbling and fulfilling in ways combat never was. The pack needs warriors who fight for the right reasons, I told her. Who protect because they care, not because they want glory. I think you're becoming that kind of warrior. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. I won't waste this second chance. I know. That's why I'm giving it. As she walked away, I felt Wilder's presence behind me before he touched me. The bond always let me know where he was. You're too forgiving, he said, though his tone held approval rather than criticism. Everyone deserves a chance to become who they're meant to be. Even people who hurt us. Even Vane? Even Vane. I turned to face him. He's your brother. You'll never stop loving him, even if you can't forgive him yet. And someday, maybe you'll be able to do both. How did you get so wise? I learned from the best. I reached up to touch his face. A king who sees value in everyone, who rules with strength and compassion, who taught me that power and kindness aren't opposites. They're meant to work together. He pulled me close, and we stood together watching the celebration. Our pack, because it was truly our pack now, celebrating not just winter, but the new beginning we'd created together. Later, we escaped to our private chambers. The celebration would continue for hours, but we needed a moment alone, away from the watching eyes and social obligations. I stood on the balcony overlooking our territory, watching snow fall gently over the forest. Wilder joined me, wrapping a warm cloak around my shoulders before pulling me back against his chest. Do you ever think about that night? I asked. The ceremony? Every day. Do you regret it? He turned me to face him, his storm gray eyes intense. That night, I claimed you to save you. But every day since, I've chosen you because I love you. And I choose you. I touched his face gently. Not because you're a king, not because you saved me, but because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you recognized my strength when everyone else saw weakness. Because you gave me time to heal, space to grow, freedom to choose. Why then? His voice was soft, vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed. Because you're home. We kissed then, slow and deep, sealing the words with touch. The bond between us sang with joy, with completion, with absolute rightness. When we finally broke apart, Wilder spoke against my lips. We have challenges ahead. Border disputes with the Northern Pack. Political maneuvering from packs who don't like our reforms. The constant work of leadership. I know. But we'll face it together. Together, I agreed. We shifted then, both of us, our wolves emerging to run through the snow-covered forest. Silver and black, light and shadow, moving as one through the winter night. The pack howled in the distance. Celebration, acceptance, unity. And I howled back, my voice echoing through the mountains. Not a cry of pain or loneliness. A declaration. I am here. I am strong. I am home. We returned to human form eventually, standing at the edge of a cliff overlooking our entire territory. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "What are you thinking?" Wilder asked. "I'm thinking about the girl who stood in that ceremony circle, broken and humiliated. And I'm grateful to her. For surviving, for refusing to give up, for taking your hand even when she was terrified." I looked at him, my eyes glowing gold in the dawn light. Because she became me, and I became who I was always meant to be. He pulled me close, and we watched the sun rise together. I thought about everything that had happened. The rejection that had felt like the end of my world. The claiming that had seemed like mercy. The discovery of who I really was. The challenge that had proven my worth. The love that had grown from recognition into something unbreakable. They mocked me when I was rejected. They laughed when I stood broken in that circle. They thought my story ended that night. But they were wrong. That wasn't my ending. It was my beginning. The beginning of understanding that strength isn't about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself. The beginning of realizing that the mate bond isn't about fate. It's about finding someone whose soul recognizes yours. The beginning of becoming not just a Luna, not just a queen, but myself. And that beginning? It's also a promise. A promise that every Omega, every servant, every wolf who's been told they're not enough will see what I see now. We were never broken. We were waiting. Waiting to be seen. Waiting to wake up. Waiting to become who we were always meant to be. And when that moment comes, when we finally open our eyes and see ourselves clearly, nothing can stop us. Not rejection, not humiliation, not fear, because we are stronger than they ever imagined. We always were. We just needed to remember. Below us, the pack was stirring. Wolves emerging from their homes, beginning a new day. Our pack, strong, unified, full of purpose and possibility. Wilder took my hand, our fingers intertwining naturally. The claiming marks on our wrists glowed softly in the dawn light, perfectly matched. Impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. "Ready to face another day, Luna Queen?" I smiled, feeling Ember strong and alert in my mind. Feeling the power that flowed through my veins, feeling the love that connected me to the man beside me. "Ready, Alpha King." Together, we turned from the cliff and headed back toward the pack house, back toward our responsibilities, our challenges, our future. Not because fate demanded it, but because we chose it. Together.